Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. A few days back, we talked about some of the big news that the Call of Duty devs actually shared with myself and a few other creators during a meeting that we had with them last week regarding the state of Warzone, the future of Warzone, and what would be changing, what they're looking to fix. And one of the biggest things that stemmed from that meeting was Console FOV, because for the first time in well over half a year, actually, Raven and Call of Duty actually gave us an official response to the lack of an FOV slider on console, and they said it's not going to happen, which obviously did not sit well with the console community. However, I do think there's more to this than we might think. I think there is a more in-depth answer that for whatever reason they didn't give, and today I wanted to break down, in my opinion, the truth behind the lack of a console FOV slider as it stands and how this is probably going to change in the future. So as we break it all down, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new here, if you want to stay up to date with everything going on in COD, this is the best place to be, so feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. And also right now, all weekends long, my G Fuel discount code WhosImmortal is actually boosted to get you 30% off your entire order. So if you want to try a new flavor, if you want to try G Fuel for the first time, now is a fantastic time to do so. Now, in case you missed it, Call of Duty essentially gave us two different responses. They gave us the formal response in the form of a blog, but they also gave us a slightly more detailed, but not super detailed response in our private call with them from the week prior. But essentially what Call of Duty said in their blog is that Field of View is clearly one of the top community requests. However, adding Field of View on console in Warzone creates major performance impacts for old gen console players. They said that their goal is to have Warzone be a performant experience on all platforms. Basically, they value performance over everything else, and that FOV slider on old gen consoles was simply not doable because it destroys frames. In our private call, they basically said we shouldn't call it an FOV slider, it should be called the how to drop your frame slider. And while yes, we do have dead silence, we do have stims, those are temporary effects, and when they internally tested this on consoles, they found the performance was atrocious, hence why Xbox One and PlayStation 4, keep in mind, 9 years going on 10-year-old tech, can't handle an FOV slider, which is disappointing because that's the majority of the player base right there on PS4 and Xbox One, but that's their official response. And for what it's worth, I think that response is justified. It is old tech. I don't think we can fully expect that it's going to be able to handle modern features like an FOV slider and keep consistent frame rates. However, their response internally to us that wasn't really communicated in the blog for next gen, or I should say current gen FOV on Xbox Series X and S, and then also on PlayStation 5, was that they weren't super interested in adding it in because it would just simply increase the skill gap even more between PC players and theoretically current gen console players versus old gen console players who wouldn't have that feature. And that to me is not the response that I feel like was ideal. And you guys made that very clear in the comments on the video where we broke this news, that that response just doesn't make a ton of sense because the skill gap's already there on PC because PC has access to FOV and all these other features that console doesn't. Now, for what it's worth, PC should have the most optimal experience possible because you have the largest investment when you're going on PC. You know, buying a PC that's capable of running everything, that's no small chunk of change. Right now there's console, but still, PC really is the most optimal way to play the game. That's not to say though that current gen tech that is capable of having an FOV slider should be alienated because of old gen consoles. And that's what really didn't sit well with a lot of the community. I also don't feel like that is a great response to have. However, like I said, I think there is more to that. And I really do wish they would have gone more in depth and more detailed with this response because I feel like there's a larger situation here that they just couldn't talk about yet because it all has to do with the unknown future of Warzone. So you got to look at the physical Warzone game. As it stands, there is no current gen, there is no PlayStation 5, there is no Xbox Series X version of Warzone out there. At one point, we did have some current gen features on Xbox Series X with the 120 hertz, as we talked about before. That's actually more so of an issue on Microsoft's, and now ever since Caldera was updated, because the Caldera tech is actually ahead of the Microsoft tech and it's no longer compatible. They got to wait for Microsoft to fix things. PlayStation 5 does have the 120 hertz option, but FOV is that real main focus, right? So without having that full-on next-gen app, it doesn't seem like it'd be a super likely and viable thing. And unfortunately, I find Modern Warfare to blame for that. The fact that Modern Warfare and Warzone are still tethered to the same app, that's a huge, huge problem. Just because Modern Warfare is old tech. That entire game is based on old tech. I saw a lot of players saying, well, if Cold War can have an FOV slider and Vanguard can have an FOV slider, why can't Warzone? And it comes back to Modern Warfare, because Modern Warfare multiplayer did not have an FOV slider for console, and that's the same app and technically the same engine, despite there being a few differences here and there that Warzone is running on. So you look to the future and you gotta say, well, Modern Warfare 2, 2022 I should say, is probably going to have an FOV slider on console. It's basically guaranteed, considering Cold War and Vanguard did. As we progress further and further on into the future with more advanced tech, obviously these features are going to remain as a staple in the game. Now, if we look back at that initial meeting that we had with the devs, they specifically said when they actually revealed MW 2022 to us, or talked about COD 2022, that Call of Duty 2022 and the new iteration of Warzone are being built from the ground up together, and they're featuring a quote-unquote new engine. Now, briefly talking about the engine there, every year they say Call of Duty's on a new engine, when in all reality it is the same engine as the year prior, except it's upgraded and a little bit more advanced. So we're still focusing on this Modern Warfare engine that sort of debuted in MW 2019, but every year we've seen upgrades to it with Vanguard. We've seen some slight changes with Warzone. We're going to see more changes to it with Modern Warfare 2022 and Warzone 2, but the fact that these games are being built from the ground up together is the big focus here, because obviously if it's the same tech, the same engine here, you're going to see an FOV slider in Modern Warfare 2022, the same tech, same engine being applied to Warzone 2. It'd make the most sense for an FOV slider to be there as well. So with Warzone 2 really being in that not so distant future, now you say end of the year, maybe early 2023, no specified dates were given to us, but with that being on the horizon now, that's where they're going to apply all of their potential ideas for optimizing and really enhancing the current gen experience with PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. So you look at Warzone now from a dev standpoint, it's like, well, we have this game. They've admitted it is far too bloated between all the Modern Warfare, Cold War, and Vanguard content. Sometimes when issues pop up, because there's so much crammed into this game now, they can't always even source the issues very quickly, and that's a huge problem that they're not super happy with. Perhaps, and keep in mind this is just me theorizing, that they don't necessarily want to dedicate the time and the resources right now to building a brand new current gen app for Warzone as it stands right now, because in 10 to 15 months down the road, they're going to be fully focused on current gen tech with the new version of Warzone, and with Modern Warfare 2022, they'd basically be taking away a ton of focus on potentially building the future of COD to do something that is temporary right now, and they're going to have to do it all over again then for the new Warzone. That'd be my guess there, and I think they sort of had to do that simple response, I guess you could call it a simple response, of it boils down to a skill gap thing, because they just couldn't share specifics on Warzone 2 and COD 2022, saying, yeah, it's going to be more so geared towards current gen tech and whatnot, because we got no specific details outside of Warzone 2 and COD 2022 being developed by IW from the ground up together with the sandbox mode. That was it for the details. They did not go in depth with anything. So I think there's just too much of an answer there that unfortunately could not be revealed yet, and in due time it'll happen. So I think a lot of players might have jumped to the conclusion, well, console FOV is never happening. It's definitely going to happen for current gen PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S, but I don't necessarily see it happening for Warzone right now, just because it wouldn't be their most optimal way to utilize their resources and their time with Warzone 2 right around the corner. So it's unfortunate, but like I said at the start, I feel like their answer wasn't fully able to be revealed because of constraints with not revealing too much information and whatnot, right? So console FOV on old gen, I don't think you're ever going to get it. Flat out, it's just not a viable thing, which sucks, but it is 9-year-old, almost 10-year-old tech, so it does kind of make sense. Hopefully, Sony and Microsoft can really get it together and produce a vast number of current gen consoles, because as we know, the availability is nearly impossible to actually get one for a MSRP price right now. There needs to be more stock for the current gen consoles, and then if they can fully be utilized and games can really gear themselves towards creating content for them instead of having to focus on the majority player base, which is still stuck on old gen tech because there's just not enough new consoles to buy and to actually find. So there's a lot of different variables here in play, but in my opinion, that's what's really happening here. I don't think console FOV is a lost hope. It's just a further away hope than a lot of us would anticipate. But that being said, that is going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the more in-depth explanation what I think is going on here. If you did, or if you just want Console FOV at some point, let me know by dropping a like on the video. And if you're new here, or if you have not already subscribed, every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD, news, updates, loadouts, tips. You'll find it all right here. So feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. As always, if you want to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code WhosImmortal for a discount on all Scuff, G Fuel, Gamer Advantage, and Control Freak products. The links for all those can be found down in the description below. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.